The journey of Greg's life started in December 2016 when he decided there was no other alternative than to make a substantial change in his life and his mindset. He struggled with addiction, depression, anxiety, and PTSD. His sons and daughters have had behavioral struggles and experienced physical and sexual abuse, as well as suicide thoughts. He successfully navigated a CPS case and used many community resource supports and systems in the family's effort to rebuild their lives and relationships with each other. This journey began at 50 years of age. Greg eventually came to work for and with many of the support systems that helped to assist his family. Greg has numerous certificates, several working credentials. He is an instructor for and facilitator for unlocking your potential through legacy business cultures. He's a certified peer counselor and a certified peer counselor trainer. Greg does basic mediation training using a trauma-informed approach in all the work he does. He's also a substance use disorder family navigator. Greg is a member of the Fatherhood Council and the state's SUD Advisory Council. Through his lived experience, it is Greg's desire to help empower families and to give hope so that others may succeed in their journeys as well. Welcome, Greg. Welcome, everybody, to the Other Nine podcast, where we talk about the guiding principles of recovery besides peer support. And with me today is my good friend, Ray Gregson. And so, Ray, how are you?
I am great. Thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely. So tell me about what's going on with you. Tell me a little bit about your recovery story and just a little bit about, so just to kind of give us a sense, because although I know you, I don't really know you. So tell me what I need to know.
All right. Well, I appreciate that and having this opportunity to share a little bit of my story. I found that I always introduce myself as two different people because there's the individual I was 9 years ago when this journey started. And then there's the man I am today. And even though we share the same name, we are completely different people. And I had to learn through my journey to let that other person go. Uh, and really how to re-establish myself. So the man I was back then had struggled with addiction for 38 years,
Mm.
and in and out of jail, homelessness, all the things that come along with that. I'd also, suffered from some behavioral health, mental health, and behavioral health issues, some PTSD, trauma, significant loss, and I was personally really struggling in every aspect of my life. And then this amazing thing happened to me. I ended up in a CPS case. It was the greatest thing that ever happened. And I often hear people say, that's the best thing that ever happened to you. I'm like, it actually was. Because through that, I have completely turned my life around. You see, I was a father figure in 11 children's lives to that point. And when that case was opened up, I wasn't going to lose my youngest daughter to the system.
Sure.
And so that's when I knew I had to make significant change in my life. And fortunately, I had a great CPS caseworker who had a real conversation with me about expectations and possibility, and how I could look at the system as not being an adversary, but as a resource. And then we talked about her caseload and what it would look like for her to get back to me, what the meetings would look like moving forward, what I could do to be proactive in my case. And through that, I got a real sense of understanding, and I found a lot of parenting classes, a lot of support resources. We found the WISE team, me and my daughter did, and we started doing these classes. And through the next little bit of time there, probably a year to a year and a half, we've gone through 16 classes. Some of them we did individually, and some of them we did together. But I
How
got
old was
I
your daughter?
at the point that we started, she was 8.
Okay.
And so she's 16 now.
Nice.
And we're doing really well. I completed my CPS case, and I become a certified peer counselor trainer. I'm a basic mediator. I'm on the SUD certification advisory committee these days. I'm on the Washington State Fatherhood Council. I teach 7 different curriculums under my company, Growing Your Mindset Gym LLC. We want to go out and get in shape, but the gym is for us to work on our inner selves. So I do
Mm.
a lot of self-esteem, self-image, self-awareness trainings now that really help us let go of the person we were back then. But the thing I'm most proud of on my journey is the relationship I now have with my daughter, watching her find her voice.
Mm-hmm.
And she does so many things throughout the state at all different levels now. Um, she advocates for her peers in the school. She advocates for the LGBTQ community. She is a youth tri-lead for the whole Great Rivers region for our Family Youth System Partner Roundtable program. And she serves on the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction's
Good for her.
Suicide Prevention and Safety Planning Committee. And she is the state youth lead on that. But none of that would have been possible had I stayed in that dependency, despair, trauma space that I had been living in for so many years. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've had navigating this, and just being able to have the individuals in my life that have come and gone, and some have stayed, and we became really good friends. And so my whole life has changed, and I love what I do, and I finally got a job I don't need a vacation from.
That's a good one. I got a job I love, but I still need a vacation. I spent some time this afternoon planning one, so I was kind of excited.
Oh,
But
that's
tell me,
wonderful.
so, I got a question. I usually kick off all my podcasts asking this question, and I just want to know what gives you hope.
What gives me hope is the people that I get to engage with. Watching my daughter is a huge piece. Finally understanding what a healthy relationship is, because for a lot of my life I didn't know what that was. I grew up in a logging culture, and that was my normal, but I've been able to create this new normal. But what truly gives me hope is when I'm supporting an individual or in a class training, and they come up and their eyes open up and they're like, oh my God, this really works.
Yeah.
Wow. And what's next? What can we do next? And they get really excited. Or when somebody calls me after a period of time after I quit supporting them and tells me about their growth and what they're doing, and just thanks me for being that small piece of
Mm.
their puzzle. That gives me hope that it's possible for anybody. And it really does inspire me to go out and continue to do all the outreach and all the trainings. And I get to go travel now. I've done the National Federation for Families Conference 2 years running. We received Outstanding Collaboration Innovative Program Awards from the Co-Occurring Disorders Conference.
That's amazing.
I presented at Pure Pathways. And this year, I get to go to Barbados for the International Men and Families Conference. And I get to speak out about the impacts that a man going through domestic violence trying to get custody of children, and how we can better engage fathers and support them in that space.
That's
There will be
fantastic.
6 continents and 110 countries represented there. So I'm very honored and blessed to have that opportunity.
That's amazing. I want to go back a little bit though. So for our folks that live, say, in Alabama or in Maine, or not, maybe not Maine, but tell us, what is logging culture? She said you grew up in logging culture and you kind of skipped over that. And I'm like, oh, I mean, I know what that is, because but for folks who don't, tell us a little bit about what is logging culture.
Well,
First of
there's
all,
the
logging is the industry of harvesting timber.
Yes, it is. And my dad had a flat shake shingle flat saw and sawmill. So he built his own roads. He felled the trees. We brought them into the mill and then processed the lumber and the shakes and the shingles and then shipped them around the country. We started doing that in 1970.
Mm.
He contracted with the Quinault Nation as a private contractor with the tribe there. And but there was a negative side to that culture as well. The domestic violence, the alcoholism, the dropping out of school, all the things that
Mhm.
come along with that. Because back in the 70s and 80s, you could make more money dropping out of school and going to work in the woods.
Right.
And so that was commonplace. And I didn't realize that everybody didn't experience that because that's all I knew.
Right.
I
Well,
always
I
thought
remember
that's the way to
moving out
be.
here and seeing those log trucks, and you'd see those giant log trucks, and they'd have like two logs in them because the trees were so big. And
Yeah.
then after a while, you get 20 trees in the back of
Yeah,
the truck that you used to carry two in. Yeah, because the trees were
absolutely.
getting smaller. And
I got a
now
lot of pictures of that.
I gotta tell you, I don't even remember the last time I've seen a log truck on the road. And I saw a couple of guys here in town where I live. It's where, we live, lots of there were a lot of loggers around here. And I saw a couple guys in the short pants and the cork boots with the suspenders. And I'm like, oh my God, it was almost like they were wearing a costume. I used to be they were just you'd always see people dressed like that. And then I saw these two young men and I thought, oh, they're still around.
Yeah, they're still out there doing it. Yeah, I live on Highway 101 in
Mm.
Lilywop, Washington, right on the Hood Canal. And
Oh
so we
yeah.
have a
Oh my
lot of log
gosh.
trucks go by.
Yes, you do. That's gorgeous up there. Nice. All right. Well, that's just a little diversion because I thought, what is, wait, what is the people are like, what did he say? He lived in. So yeah, it was
No,
fun.
I get it. Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you something if you don't mind answering. You mentioned it a little bit, but what are you in recovery from?
For me, I am my recovery looks like I do nothing illegal and nothing pharmaceutical because those were the things that ended me up in the courts and jail and in front of judges and all those places I
Okay,
didn't
that's
want to
pretty
be.
simple.
Um, and I adhere to that really big. There was a time that I was diagnosed terminal and given 2 to 4 years to live. And
No kidding.
I had spent 24 out of 28 months in ICU. And when I got out, I'd lost my house, my kids, my car, my job, and was handed a bag of pills and told, well, we don't know if it's 2 years or 4 years, but you're going to pass away. You need to get your affairs in order.
Oh
And
my
I had
God.
nowhere to go. So I spent the next 2 years homeless. Unfortunately, because I was terminal, they kept prescribing me more pills and I continued to take them. And before I knew it, I was no longer in control of me. And,
Wow.
and I waited, kept doing it and I waited. And then all of a sudden 10 years had gone by and that CPS happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. I'm still here. I better fix this.
Wow. Okay. That is a story.
And that was 18 years ago. So I was given 2 to 4 years to live 18 years ago, and I'm so happy that I'm still here. I don't think that a doctor should tell you you're terminal. I think they should say that you've exceeded my ability to treat you, and you might want to look for other options because um, I haven't been in a hospital setting or in need of those services in over 3.5 years. And so
That's fantastic. What do you think was the most effective modality for you as you went through and tried different things for both your mental health treatment and your substance use disorder? What do you think was the one thing that really, really was the linchpin to helping you?
well, it was self-education, and there was a space of responsibility.
Mm,
It was, I knew it wasn't my 8-year-old daughter's fault that we were in that space. I knew that it was my responsibility to fix it. And for the longest time, and especially in the beginning of my journey, I was looking for fault or placing blame. And one of the biggest things I stuck on is, why is this happening to me? This is not my fault. And then when I finally come to the realization that I am the only one that can make me happy. I'm the only one that can make change. And I started taking responsibility for that. It actually gave me my power back. And um, that's when I started to be present and engaged in every class I took and everything I did. And then one class led to another class, which led to another class. And before I knew it, I was a basic mediator. I was a certified peer counselor. I was advocating for other fathers moving through the system. There was in the beginning, and you come through this, there was domestic violence in the house that night, and I left to avoid, the police coming. I didn't
yeah.
want to go to, and um, after that, the police were called. My daughter was in that same space at that time. And so the next morning, CPS showed up and said that I knowingly endangered my child and left them in a bad space, knowing that there was going to
Oh.
be domestic violence, and we were going to have to navigate a case. And through that, I had one of the resources they offered me was a domestic violence support group.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I realized I was an advocate, because they send you home with the power and control wheel, with the red flags, papers, and all the things that you learn in there, which is a great support for any domestic violence survivors. And I would recommend anybody just taking it to find out what a healthy relationship looks like. But one day they sent me home with one of those, you know, extra sheets, and somewhere in there, I would always set them down next to my daughter when she was eating her breakfast, because at that time I couldn't really tell her anything. But if I put it next to her cereal bowl, she would read through it. And
Like it's like reading the back of the cereal box. When you're
yeah,
eating, somehow you'll read anything.
yeah. And on this one flyer they sent home, or handout, it said you should be with your mom. And I'm a single dad trying to get custody of my daughter, and she told me, "See, even in your classes, it says I'm supposed to be with mom. You stole me." And so when I went
Ooh,
back into the
that's got
next
to be hard.
class, I took it and told them, "Hey, you can't send me home with this stuff. I'm a single dad trying to get custody of my daughter and rebuild a relationship that has been strained." And so through that, we sat down and rewrote all 12 modules to be gender neutral.
Oh my gosh,
And
that's fantastic.
so that was the first time I actually found out that our voice can make us an advocate, and we can impact others' lives without even knowing it. So everybody that came through that class after me, male, female, or same-sex relationships, didn't have to deal with that space that the man was the perpetrator. And that led me to the Fatherhood Council
That is
for the state of
amazing. What a great
Washington.
story. We never know, right? Where
Yeah.
what's going to lead us to where?
Yeah, and that's just the way it's gone throughout. I really don't feel like this has been hard. The hardest thing in my journey was not getting to where I am, but believing that I could do it, believing in myself, and
Hmm.
gaining what is self-image, why is it important, and how do you build it? You know, what does
Yeah,
it mean to be self-aware, and all those self spaces? Because we say it all the time in peer support. Self-care, self-love is never selfish, and it is needed.
oh, I love that. Yeah,
So
that's true. That's really true. I think so often one of the things that we lose in addiction and mental illness is we lose that connection to ourselves because everybody keeps telling us that who we are is wrong and who we are is broken and who we are is bad. And so I just kind of walked through life with this sense of uh, shame is not even the right word for it. Just kind of just true belief that I was a failure as a human. And um, and then it wasn't until I got into recovery that I kind of started to heal some of that.
no, absolutely, and I honestly believe, and in actually one of my trainings, that you were born to win and conditioned to lose, and we get conditioned by our peers, by our parents, by our teachers, by our culture, by our
Yeah, yeah,
circumstances, and when you're told something long enough, you honestly start to believe it for
that is the
yourself.
truth.
And what I find working or supporting people coming out of recovery, or coming out of a CPS situation, or whatever it may be for them, is that they're carrying all that baggage from what their life was before, when they were in that dependency, that despair, that trauma.
Hmm.
And so they're carrying all that baggage, like shame, regret, embarrassment, and they struggle letting that go, which leads into imposter syndrome, or a space where they don't feel that they belong, or even have a well enough self-image of themselves to believe that it is possible. And so when we can help them see something in themselves that they don't see in themselves right now, I think
Right.
that that is a beautiful space that we get to go. They
Isn't
say,
it?
yeah, you've heard that I took the road less traveled and it made all the difference, you know. But sometimes we as peers get to go where there's no road and leave a path for others to follow. And so I think that that's a beautiful space that we get to do. Everybody's journey is unique to them, but there's similarities, and there's ways that we can help support and guide through them understanding their core values. What is it that they're advocating for when they don't even realize they are? Kind of like I was when I went into that DV group and said, "Hey, you
Yeah.
can't do this."
Yeah. So, I know peer support is the one thing that gets so much attention because it's such an effective thing and because, it does change lives and it gives us all opportunities to make meaning and purpose out of the things we went through. And I want to look at the other guiding principles of recovery, not to minimize peer support, but just to kind of
Absolutely.
highlight how I think peer support is the one that brings everything else out. So,
Yes.
so it sounds like I think I heard one, but let me ask you another time is, um, when you were going through all what you went through, did you feel respected?
Um, and it depending on the situation I was in and where I was at, I had a lot of struggles in some of the parenting class being the only dad in there. And so that was like more insecurity or I don't know,
Hmm.
just feeling off. I don't know that it was a lack of respect there. Um, but I think that where I felt the most lack of respect was within myself at the time and overcoming that.
Yeah.
I knew what I had to do to complete my case. I knew that this was super important. And through that, I was able to connect with so many resources. And I feel like we have a lot of them out there that are doing some really wonderful things. But sometimes they become very siloed and they only do the one
Right.
thing. And then we don't give them that soft handoff. And then that orienting somebody that's going to go through that process to understand what is that really going to look like and do some role play so they understand how to answer the questions and what that is going to be like. I was very blessed. My situation came in that I got to experience the first graduate of community court and be that person. Northwest Justice came in and
Okay.
supported me with my parenting plan. Then I was offered the Grace Harbor Opportunity for Successful Transitions program, where I found Unlocking Your Potential, which led to the We're in This Together with the Dispute Resolution Center, which brought me
Hmm.
to be a basic mediator. And so everything, every piece of that puzzle, it was so much more than just getting those straight edges of the puzzle together, because those are pretty easy to put together when you're putting together a puzzle. But
Hmm.
I had to find out where all those beautiful colored pieces went to complete that beautiful picture of what my life could be. And
Yeah.
that came through the mentorships, through the soft handoffs, through the amazing support that I was able to navigate because I had a kind of a different situation. So
Because you were a man and you were in this whole world of where you were not a perpetrator and every other man in the situation was. Do you think that influenced some of the opportunities?
it absolutely did. The the reason when I started to try to get custody, the guardian ad litem said, absolutely not with your criminal record, with your addictive behavior in past. You will not get custody of your daughter. Um, when it came time for the court, I'd completed 13 of those 16 classes by then. So we had certificates there. They could see that I was really driven to make this happen. I had to learn to reparent. And so the Dads Matters and all these other classes really came in big for me.
Hmm.
Um, but I do believe that because I was a male coming through domestic violence, there was a different framing in my situation, maybe coming even through CPS,
Yeah,
where they were like, okay, if you're this motivated, we don't get dads in here like this. We would love to see a dad be successful. And so
got it.
there were some situations that I think were beneficial through that. And at the same time, in some of the spaces, it was embarrassing. It was a little scary to walk into a parenting class that was I was the only male, or walking into a domestic violence support group where I'm 6'1" and it's full of female domestic violence survivors, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I don't
Yeah.
know. I didn't hit her back. I don't know. I didn't know what to say."
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. But you stuck
So
it out.
Yes,
I love what you
absolutely.
talked about when you talked about personal responsibility, because I've always said that that is the key to my recovery for sure. Now, what I was taking responsibility for in the beginning was very different than what I get to take responsibility for now. But it was
Yeah.
just the fact of taking responsibility, of owning up to stuff, and being willing to take the next step and the next step and the next step, even though you're not sure where it's going to take you. I have found that um, any effort that I put into my recovery, either substance use disorder or um, mental health recovery, it just was, I just feel that it was just returned tenfold. And
Oh,
I came to really have faith in that, that I just had to do the next step, and then unforeseen circumstances would unfold in front of me, and that I had no idea were even possible. Suddenly, here are these options in front of me that were helpful or not, but I got to choose.
exactly. I think what stood out for me when I started to really focus on, no matter what happens in my life, it's my responsibility. I either
Right.
put myself there, allowed it to happen, or didn't do my due diligence to figure it out. But
Yeah.
it
What?
really
I
did.
don't understand.
But yeah, but that also brought me to a space of, you know, understanding that things were possible, and then that gave me some confidence and really some directions, helped me see some strengths in myself that where could step up. I moved from a reactive to a creative space, instead
Mm,
of reacting to everything that happened. I learned how to communicate and respond. If we go in and see a doctor and they tell you, oh, the medication is reacting to your body wrong or something, we get
yeah.
that's a negative thing. But if we come in and they say your body's responding to it, hey, that's a positive thing.
Right?
So
Yeah, that's
so
very true. Yeah.
but I think we utilize those kind of word tracks in every day that hold ourselves back and
Yeah.
create these self-imposed mental limitations on ourselves because that's what we see or we've been told we can do.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was told during my journey was that if you want to kill a big dream, tell it to a small-minded person. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That is the truth though.
Yeah,
Because one of the things that when I was just okay, I'm stumbling all over myself here.
it's all right.
One of the key things I learned early on in my mental health recovery is that thoughts come before reactions. Thoughts come before emotions. And I've always felt like I was held hostage by my emotions, and I was always, my mother would say, "Oh, Mary, you're so emotional," and it would be like, "Well, how can I help it? I can't help it. It's just what I feel," And then when I realized that thoughts come before emotions, and that I can take responsibility for my thoughts. And that another example of that is when I was 23, 22, 20, 23. 23. No, I was 22 years old, and I was pregnant with my son, and I moved out here to live with my sister, and she would respond to my negativity with positivity. So I would say something negative, like, "Oh my God, it's raining again," and she'd say, "That's why it's so green here." And
Unbelievable.
she never said, "Oh, Mary, you're so negative." She never said anything like that. She would just kind of hold a mirror up by saying something positive. That was the other time when I realized that my thinking was really quite negative. And changing that has really been life-changing for me, really just being aware of the impact that our thoughts can have on us and our mindsets can have on us. And when we start looking for problems instead of solutions. Absolutely.
No, it is. It's huge. I mean, if we can just take a small space, um, you know, the how many times do we say, "Oh, I can't do that"? Well, why can't we just say, "Well, I haven't learned how to yet. Anything worth
Yes.
doing is worth doing poorly for a little while. Nobody's
Right?
born a gold medal skier." But most of us get up in the morning and oh, I have to go do this. I need this, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and how do we change it from have to, got to, need to get to, want to, and have this opportunity? When I was coming through in the beginning, I would enter a room or a space with a responsive thought process, how is this going to impact me? Worst case scenario type of
Right.
thing. And okay, who's in here that I don't want to talk to? Where can I sit? My back's against the wall. Where's all the exits? And so I would go to these classes, but oftentimes I wouldn't engage. I would learn and I would take in the information. Now, when I walk in a space, I look around for who can I talk to here? What can I learn from this person? And it moves from, being that reactive space into this creative, because now I'm looking for opportunity. And
Right.
I've met some of the most amazing people. You were absolutely one of those people that we got into a conversation in a just, I think we were in Spokane when we started talking about stuff over there.
Yeah.
And so you never know who's in the room, um,
Right.
and what their takeaway is going to be. And
Right.
so I always love that piece of everything, is just that switching from a reactive to a creative, eliminating the can'ts and the have to, need to, got to is putting you in a space of less than or lacking. And when we see ourselves as less than, then we're not holding ourselves with high self-esteem. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
that's where I've gone through this, but it really has helped.
Unconditional high regard, personal high regard, right as they say in rap training. I love that.
Yes.
I love that. And if you were to kind of summarize the gifts that you've gotten from moving into recovery for you, what would you, besides that you talked about the relationship with your daughter, which is awesome, but what else are some of the gifts that you've gotten from recovery that you had no idea were even an option?
You know, all the opportunity that I got to go through right now. You want a hard job, be homeless or addicted for a year or two.
Honest
I
to
mean,
God, right?
it is 24/7 of where am I going to eat? Where am I going to sleep? Where am I going to get my next whatever? And everything is always in a stressful space. I think one of the greatest gifts I get now is that I get to go meet so many people. I get all these opportunities to go do things. And I honestly don't feel like I work a day in my life. I love what I do and I get to continue to learn. And my every relationship, not just with my daughter, but with my other family, with my friends, with it has changed because I've learned to be a better communicator, because I've learned that word phrases matter. And I've really focused on not holding expectations for others. I
Yeah.
always feel like if we expect something from somebody else or another area, then that leaves us in another space of less than or wanting. But to hold them for ourselves, we should hold them very high. You want to
Right.
you want to
Right.
build a better self-image.
Because
Start
that's the only
keeping the
thing you really have.
promises you make to yourself.
I mean, that's the only thing you really have control over is holding yourself accountable and
Yeah.
setting the expectations high.
Yeah, and out of a lot of the trainings I've taken and a lot of the podcasts that I listen to and my continuing education that I do, one of the top things of this that successful people say is their best skill is integrity.
Right?
And
I that is absolutely true for me. As a business owner, as a person who is in, is people are relying on me and I'm relying on other people, I have to be 100% honest and just take and just and hit things head on.
yeah,
When I start dodging and weaving, then I don't feel good about myself, and then that's not good. No, no, I agree. The integrity piece is really the bedrock, I think, for that whole self-esteem and personal responsibility.
absolutely. No, I completely agree. Um, I love that you say you hit things head on. That reminded me of the story of the cow and the buffalo. Both of them can sense when a storm is coming, but a cow will run away from the storm, and a buffalo will turn and run into the storm. The difference in those choices are that when the cow runs away, it ends up staying in the storm longer because it's
Mm,
running with it. And so it finds itself in that mess, in that rain, in that storm much longer. But the buffalo turns and runs toward it and has a shorter time because it gets through it quicker and is on the other side.
yeah.
For a lot of my life, I was the cow. And when I learned to become the buffalo, and face my issues, face my struggles,
Yes.
take those responsibilities. My time in those spaces were much shorter. I took so much more away from it, and I grew in ways that I didn't even believe that I had in me. I mean, I always thought I was going to work in the woods, drive a log truck, fall trees, do something. And
Right.
when I got out and went into woodworking, where I was remodeling casinos and stuff for 10 years of my life before I was injured, um, I thought, okay, well, that's not going to be my career. I had no idea that I would be able to overcome the struggles and the issues I had that I thought were the worst things that happened to me, and be able to do the things I do today and say that those were the best things that happened to me. When our
Yeah.
greatest struggles become our greatest strengths and we are
Right.
able to utilize and share those, that's when everything changes. Because you know what, you had to go through that to get to where you are today, to have the understanding to support others navigating similar situations. And so I'm glad that I had a lot of interesting spaces in my life, and I'm glad that I'm on the other side and get to share
Yeah.
back that lived experience with others
I think
navigating theirs.
I think it was Churchill who said, "When you're walking through hell, walk faster." It's like, yeah, okay. And then I've had a button on my refrigerator for as long as I can remember that says the only way out is through.
Absolutely. You got to get through
You gotta, you gotta.
it.
Otherwise, like you're saying, you're just in it forever. You're just in it, and there's no out if you're just gonna stay in it. You have to get up and go through it.
And hope is that foundational cornerstone that we get to help build off of. When I had that conversation with that CPS worker, and then some resources came through, and I got my veterans homeless grant to get into my apartment. When all those things started to fall together, ooh, all of a sudden I had hope. I had
Right.
good feeling. I was showing myself I could do many other things. Um, and I think that's where it all began. And so, yeah,
I imagine that your daughter saw that too and saw that you were trying to
yeah,
and really trying and really working hard to keep her in your life.
yeah. I think that was one of my biggest struggles, because most of the children that I'd raised to that time had been boys, little boys.
Ah,
Um, and so raising a little girl and then figuring out, well, how do you discipline a girl? Because I don't want her to think a man can hit her when she grows up, or, so there
right?
was no spanking. Learning to communicate on a level that was understanding. So instead of coming in, if she didn't do her chores after school or didn't do something, instead of coming in and grounding her or yelling at her, I could call her up and I learned to say, I'm feeling really frustrated right now. We had an agreement that this is going to happen. Can you see why I'm frustrated? Do you see your part in this? What can we do differently so you're not feeling like I'm here to yell at you and I'm not standing here being frustrated? And it helped us learn to share responsibility in our growth in our lives and learn to communicate within each other. And it also allowed her to see that her voice mattered, her decisions made a difference, and that she had some control over herself and our future moving
Yeah.
forward. And she just took off with it. I'm so proud of her. She does outreach. She has been work. Well, last year she was helping with Youth Moves National with some things there. I mean, she's just done some incredible things. She's in Running Start at college,
Good
high
job.
school, that's
Yeah.
college. And I'm
Right.
like, she had me at school when she was in between grade school and going into junior high about 3 to 5 times a week for behavioral issues, struggles she was having in class. And
She's
now,
turned it around too.
yeah, she's completely turned it around. And I do believe that it's that lead by example thing. When she started to see what healthy looked like, and that her voice mattered, and that people were interested in what she was going through within the schools and the systems that she had to deal with.
Yeah.
Um, that's when she learned that she could be an advocate. And that's when she became the youngest tri-lead in the state of Washington for the
Isn't that
Family Youth System Partner Roundtable Program, Grace Harbor. And
that's fantastic.
yeah,
Good for
that
her.
was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and it should be. Yeah. I mean, that's so cool. And I think and also what you're saying is that your daughter did not grow up in logging culture.
No, unfortunately, there was a time that I was not in her life after when she was really little, and then we
Yeah.
got back together when she was about 5. And then by 8, me and her mom were separating. And so there was a lot of transition and aces that came along with
Sure.
her childhood. But that she's learned to lower the stigma that it's okay to ask for help, that engaging in that help is a
Yeah.
positive thing. And so I'm glad that she's learned it at such a young age, and that she's so excited to share it with her peers and with
Yeah.
others and her perspective. I can't wait to see how many people she impacts. Yeah.
Right? Isn't that something? That's amazing. Is there anything that you would want people to know? Is because we're kind of closing up a little bit here, and
Okay.
I'm just wondering, is there anything that's like you just think is like kind of a really essential knowing that someone needs to have as they move forward in their life?
Well, there's a couple things that it is more about the immediate need. It's got to be the whole person. Let's take a look at the whole picture of your life. What does that look like? The wrap, you raised up the wrap plan. What do you look like
Mm,
when you're healthy? What do you look like when you feel yourself starting to slip? Who do you want involved if something does go wrong? Make having that plan. If you're failing the plan, you're planning to fail. Somebody told me,
yeah.
and that success looks different to for everyone, and failure is really not failing. It's just something that didn't work, and you never fail until you quit. And those things that didn't work are stepping stones to success. You know which
That is
direction to
exactly
move.
correct. That is exactly correct. I crochet and I attempted this new crocheting project and I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. It was a complete failure. I walked away. And then I picked up another project and realized the failure of that previous project gave me perspective on the new one. And so I'm like, oh, and then I could go back to the previous one and do it without hesitation. So there's just like it's just like you're saying that like failure is just a mindset.
It really is.
It
And
really is.
the only other thing that I would really, focus in on is that um, we can do whatever we want. A dog is always a dog, a horse is always a horse, but a human could be anything they set their minds to. And so it
Right.
comes down to, are you interested in this? Or are you committed to it? Because if you're interested, you're going to make excuses. You're not going to, I'm not want to, we'll start tomorrow. But if you're committed, you're going to do whatever it takes. You have to want it for yourself. And the thing that I found was the most difficult when I was starting to set my goals and move through different things was that whole believing that I could. And so it's it's super important that we know that it is possible, and that if you
Yeah.
set your mind to it, you can do it. And it isn't that we set our goals too high and miss, it's sometimes we set them too low and hit, and then we level off. And so we don't know what the next step is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so just keep taking the next right step, and it is possible. And
Yeah.
hope exists. And it looks different for many people. I mean, there's many pathways, and it is the whole person.
And and
But
that is one of the guiding principles of recovery is that there's many pathways to recovery and that we all come at it from different places and we go through different things and we come out different portals. But that doesn't mean that our experiences are not valid. And
they
and
absolutely are.
and that doesn't mean that we are all going to land in the same place either.
You never know where you're gonna go. It
Uh,
could be, it could
and
be Barbados.
I'm still really jealous of that. That's amazing.
Yeah, somebody had heard my story, and so a program from up in Canada reached out, and we had a couple Zoom calls, and they asked if I would be interested. I'm like, interested? Sign me up.
That's fantastic. So proud of you. I'm so
Well, thank
proud of
you.
you. And I just love that you're one of our trainers here at Holding the Hope. And yeah.
I absolutely appreciate all you do,
Ah, thanks.
and your diligence of it, your commitment to it, and just willingness to go the extra mile for not only the trainers, but the people that come into the classes. I
Well,
super
that's the
enjoy.
point, right? I mean, we
I,
want to, I mean, why do this if we're not going to make a difference in other people's lives?
you do a great job. And I absolutely admire you and just
Yeah.
appreciate being a part of your amazing program.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. I've worked really hard. This year is my 20th year in business. Actually, Wednesday was my March 4th. I was digging around in my paperwork and I found paperwork I signed March 4th, 20 let's see, 2005. So like I submitted my articles of incorporation 20 years ago this week, and it has been a journey. And what one of the things I've learned is that there are no business problems. There's only personal problems that have an impact on your business. So
Like that.
if you want to be in business and you want to be a successful business person, you have to deal with your own stuff. You have got to deal with yourself. You can't just be like what we talked about integrity, right? You can't be a person of integrity and be successful in business. I mean, you can't be a person that nobody trusts, right? I mean,
Right.
I guess at some point you might be able to achieve some level of success, but for me, that's not the kind of success I want.
Um, One thing that I just came to mind with all that you were saying there is when we do decide that we're going to make that change and we're going to move into a better space,
Yeah.
our minds oftentimes, especially coming out of transitioning from whatever that looks like for somebody, immediately goes to, yeah, right. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The how is not
My
the issue.
my advice is don't worry about the how.
Uh-uh.
Find the why you're doing it. Once you
Yeah.
understand why you're doing it, that'll give you your purpose and your commitment, and the how will present itself if you are that dedicated to that change.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ray, this has just been a delight. I really appreciate it.
I always enjoy talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I really, I started this podcast and then, it was, it just, I had my first one with John Murphy and then life circumstances happened and things got in the way. And then I just put out that email like, hey, you want to be my podcast? Email me. And then we set up the process and all of a sudden, all these appointments are showing up on my calendar. My assistant's just killing it, bringing all these people in it. And at first I kind of panicked and I'm like, right, how am I going to do that? I don't know what I'm doing. Ah! And then I realized, hey, I get to talk about recovery every week for at least 2 hours with all these wonderful people, of some of which I have never even heard of before. So it's going to be really fun, and I'm just really excited. It helps me in my recovery to hear other people's stories, and it's just really inspirational. You're an inspiration.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But I agree with you. Working with or hearing from any other individual helps me in my recovery or in my willingness to move even further forward from where I am. I'm such as yourself in your 20 years doing this. It excites me for my growing your mindset. Moving forward, we just became promising program with
Oh, great.
Department of Children, Youth, and Families to work with justice involved youth. We are in Mason and Lewis County and hoping to branch out into more counties within Washington State.
And when you
And
say we, you're talking about your company?
yeah, my growing your mindset, Jim,
Oh, God, nice.
because I really believe that our own mindset gives us self-imposed mental limitations as to what we can or we can't do. And so how do we overcome those? And
Yeah,
there is a process, there is education, and it really does start with self-esteem, self-image, and
yeah,
self-awareness
yeah.
and self-care. You gotta, if you don't know how to take
Self-care.
care of yourself, you're just, oh no.
That's right. That's right. So great. Ray, what's the website?
It is growing your mindset at .com and then
Okay.
or growing your mindset at gmail.com. And
Okay.
the growing your mindset is all one word.
Okay. Well, yeah.
I
Okay. Good enough. Thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much. I so appreciate you. And you know what to do, right? Stay
Absolutely.
hopeful.
Stay hopeful. I love it.
All
Thank you
right.
so much, Mary. You have a great weekend. We'll talk
Thank
soon.
you. Bye.
Bye bye.